I booked this Airbnb for a work conference in March. Nothing special. I just needed a place to sleep for 3 nights. The listing looked fine. Normal house in a quiet neighborhood. The reviews were good. 4.8 stars or something. The host messaged me maybe 10 minutes after I booked. Check-in instructions, and then this really long paragraph about house rules. I skimmed it. I remember thinking it was a lot of text, but I was at work, and I just wanted to confirm the address. I saved the lockbox code and didn't think about it again. I got there around 8 at night. I'd been in meetings all day. The code worked fine. I let myself in, and the first thing I noticed was how clean everything was. Not just clean, spotless, like nobody had ever actually lived there. The couch still had those crease marks from the store. There was a bowl of fake lemons on the kitchen counter. I dropped my bag by the door and looked around. 2 bedrooms down a hall, bathroom between them. The living room had a TV mounted on the wall and a coffee table with nothing on it. That's when I saw the camera. Small black thing in the corner by the TV. The lenses pointing at the couch and the front door. I pulled out my phone and went back to the listing. I thought I remembered it saying exterior cameras only. But when I scrolled down to the house rules, there it was. 1 camera in the living area for security purposes. I must have missed it when I skimmed. I didn't love it, but I was tired. I figured I'd just stay in the bedroom mostly. I wasn't planning to hang out in the living room anyway. That first night, I unpacked and worked on my laptop in bed for a while. Around midnight, I realized I hadn't eaten dinner. I came out to the kitchen for the granola bars I'd left in my bag. The living room was dark, except for the blue light from the router under the TV. I grabbed my bag, and that's when I noticed the camera had moved. Or I thought it had. The angle looked different. Like it was pointed more toward the hallway now, instead of the front door. I stood there in my t-shirt and boxers, just staring at it, trying to remember exactly where it had been pointing before. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I just hadn't looked at it closely enough when I first got there. The next morning, I had an early meeting. I left before 7 and didn't get back until after 6. When I checked my phone at lunch, there was a text from the host. "Hope you slept well. Let me know if you need anything." Normal message, then another one. "I noticed you were up pretty late. Hopefully the place is comfortable." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't reply. That night I ordered food and ate it in the bedroom. I didn't want to sit on the couch. I kept thinking about that camera, about him watching me stand there at midnight in my underwear, looking confused. Around 11, I came out to brush my teeth, and I looked at the camera again. I don't know why I did what I did next. I grabbed a dish towel from the kitchen and draped it over the camera, just covered the lens. I felt better immediately. I went to bed. I woke up to my phone buzzing. The room was completely dark. I checked the time. 3:14 a.m. 7 texts from the host. They'd all come in within the last 10 minutes. "Why did you cover the camera? Can you please remove the towel? The camera is required for property safety. This is against house rules. I need to be able to monitor the property. Please respond. I'm going to come over and check on things." I sat up in bed. My hands were shaking. I read them all twice. I thought about texting back, but I didn't know what to say. It was 3 in the morning. Why was he watching the camera at 3 in the morning? I got out of bed and looked at the bedroom door. There wasn't a lock. I thought about pushing something in front of it, but then I heard a car outside. I went to the window and looked through the curtain. A sedan had parked across the street. The headlights turned off. I pushed the desk chair under the door handle. I'd seen people do that in movies. I didn't know if it would actually work. I got back in bed and kept my phone in my hand. I turned the sound off, but kept the screen on. Maybe 20 minutes later, I heard a key in the front door lock. The sound was very clear. The door opened and closed. Footsteps in the living room, not rushed, just normal walking. I heard him move the dish towel. I knew because I heard it hit the floor, that soft sound of cloth landing on carpet. Then he walked toward the hallway. I stopped breathing. His footsteps got closer. He tried the bedroom door handle. It turned, but the door didn't open because of the chair. He tried it again, pulled harder. The chair scraped a little but held. He didn't say anything, didn't knock, didn't ask if I was okay. He just stood there for what felt like a long time, but was probably 30 seconds. Then he walked back to the living room. I heard him moving around, opening something. A drawer, maybe, closing it. He walked to the kitchen. I heard the sink run for a few seconds. Then it stopped. More footsteps. He was just walking around his own house at 4 in the morning while I was trapped in the bedroom. He finally left. I heard the front door close and lock. I heard the car start outside. I didn't move for another hour, just sat there in bed watching the door. I left at 6 a.m. The sun wasn't even up yet. I threw everything in my bag and moved the chair and opened the door as quietly as I could. The living room looked exactly the same. The dish towel was folded neatly on the coffee table. The camera was pointed at the front door again. I left the keys in the lockbox and drove to a hotel near the conference center. I got 3 more texts from him that day, asking if everything was all right, asking if I was checking out early. I didn't respond to any of them. I never wrote a review. I wanted to, but I didn't know what to say, and I kept thinking about what he might write about me if I did. The conference ended, and I flew home. Sometimes I still think about that camera, about him sitting somewhere watching me stand in his living room at midnight, about him getting in his car at 3 in the morning because I covered a lens. I don't stay in Airbnbs anymore. This happened last October, near Fayetteville, West Virginia. I'd been working too much, and I just needed to get away from everything for a few days. No people, no emails. I found this cabin on one of those rental sites. The photos showed a small place in the woods, with a creek nearby. The host's description said it was secluded. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. The drive took longer than I expected. The last part was all gravel roads, narrow, trees on both sides. My GPS stopped working about 3 miles from the cabin. No cell signal. I had to follow the directions the host had emailed me. Turn left at the old fence. Right at the fork. Things like that. I got there maybe 20 minutes before dark. The cabin was smaller than it looked in the photos. Way smaller. It was basically one room with a kitchenette against one wall and a bathroom in the corner. There was a loft bed that you had to climb a ladder to get to. The porch was just 3 wooden steps and some planks, but it was clean. It looked maintained. I brought my bag and the groceries I'd picked up in town inside. The plan was simple. Read, sleep, maybe hike a little. Just disconnect for 3 days. I made dinner on the hot plate, pasta, sat on the porch while it got dark. The woods were loud. Bugs, birds, other sounds I couldn't identify. I went inside when I couldn't see anything anymore, locked the door, climbed up to the loft and read for a while. I fell asleep around 11. Something woke me up. I didn't know what time it was. It was completely dark. I heard a sound downstairs, not inside, outside but close, like scraping. Metal against wood, maybe. I stayed where I was in the loft bed. I didn't move. The sound stopped for a second, and then started again. Slow, deliberate, like someone dragging something. I reached for my phone on the floor next to the bed. The screen wouldn't turn on. Dead. I'd forgotten to plug it in before I went to sleep. My charger was in my bag downstairs. The scraping stopped. I waited. I could hear my own breathing. Then I heard the door handle turn. Not fast. Slow. Like someone was testing it carefully. The door didn't open. I'd locked it. I was sure I'd locked it. The handle turned back. Then again. Someone was definitely trying it. I didn't make any sound. I was on my stomach, looking over the edge of the loft down at the front door. I couldn't see much, just the shape of the door. The windows didn't let in a lot of light. The handle stopped moving. I waited. Nothing happened. I don't know how long I stayed there. A long time. My arms were shaking from holding myself up to look over the edge. I finally climbed back into bed, but I didn't sleep. I just laid there listening. Every small sound seemed loud. The cabin settling. Wind. Maybe animals outside. I kept thinking I heard footsteps on the porch, but I wasn't sure. When it started getting light outside, I climbed down the ladder. My legs felt weak. I went to the door and checked it. Still locked. I looked out the window next to the door. The porch was empty. But when I looked past the porch toward where I'd parked my car, I saw another vehicle. A truck, dark colored. It was parked in the trees, maybe 50 feet away. I hadn't seen it when I arrived. I didn't recognize it. I stood there looking at it for a while. I thought maybe it belonged to the host. Maybe he used it to store tools or something. But he hadn't mentioned anything about another vehicle being on the property. That's when I noticed the paper on the floor by the door. A piece of notebook paper, folded once. It must have been slid under the door. I picked it up. My hands were shaking. I unfolded it. There was writing on it, handwritten, blue ink. It said, "You shouldn't be here." That's all. Just those 4 words. I looked out the window again at the truck. I couldn't see if anyone was in it. The windows were tinted or dirty. I thought about going out to my car. The keys were in my bag. My phone was dead, so I couldn't call anyone. I'd have to drive until I got a signal. I grabbed my bag, didn't bother packing anything else. Left the groceries. I unlocked the door and opened it slowly. Looked around. Nothing moved. I walked fast to my car. Kept looking at the truck. Nobody got out. I got in my car and locked the doors immediately. Started it. Backed up and turned around. I didn't look back until I was on the main gravel road. I drove for maybe 20 minutes before my phone came back on. 4% battery. I pulled over and called the host. It rang 6 times before he answered. I told him what happened. The sounds. Someone is trying the door. The truck. The note. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "No one should be on that property." He said he'd go check it out. He asked if I wanted him to call the police. I said I didn't know. What would I tell them? Someone tried my door handle. There was a truck. I got a note. He offered me a full refund. Said previous guests had mentioned feeling uncomfortable, but nothing specific. He sounded upset, not angry, just concerned. I said I'd take the refund. I didn't want to go back there to get my stuff. He said he'd mail it to me. I drove to a hotel near the highway, charged my phone, tried to relax, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. About the note. About someone being out there in the dark doing that. Trying to get in. Later that day, after I'd slept a little, I looked up the address of the cabin online. I don't know why. I guess I wanted to see if anything had happened there before. I found an old news article from 2019. Someone had gone missing in that area. A woman. She'd been staying in a rental property nearby. They found her car, but never found her. The case went cold. I don't know if it's connected. The article didn't mention the specific cabin, and that area probably has a lot of rental properties. But I kept thinking about the note. You shouldn't be here, like a warning or a threat. The host mailed my stuff back to me 2 weeks later. He included a note apologizing again. He said when he went to check on the cabin, everything was locked up. No sign of anyone, no truck. He didn't mention if he found anything else. I never heard anything more about it. I thought about calling the local police, but I didn't. What would I say? I heard sounds. Someone tried my door. I saw a truck that wasn't there the next day. It doesn't sound like much when you say it out loud, but I know what I heard. I know someone was there. I still have the note. I kept it. I don't know why. Sometimes I take it out and look at it. The handwriting is neat. I haven't gone back to West Virginia. I don't plan to. And I don't book secluded places anymore. I stick to regular hotels and towns, places with other people around. I tell people it's because I decided I don't like camping or roughing it. That's easier than explaining the real reason. Sometimes I wonder who was out there, if they're still there, if other people have rented that cabin since, if they've had problems. I could probably look it up, see if the listing is still active, but I don't. I don't want to know. I needed a place to stay for a month while I looked for a new apartment. My lease had ended, and the place I was supposed to move into fell through. I found this room on Airbnb, a guy named Mark. The listing said he traveled a lot for work, so I'd basically have the place to myself. Private entrance, my own bathroom. It was cheaper than a hotel. I booked it. Mark was there when I checked in. Mid-40s maybe. Normal looking. He seemed nice. He showed me around. The room was in the back of the house. Decent size. There was a door that led to a small bathroom, and another door that went outside to the driveway. He gave me both keys, told me to make myself at home, said he'd be leaving for a work trip the next morning, and wouldn't be back for at least 2 weeks. He left as he said. I had the whole place to myself. It was quiet. I worked during the day and came home and watched TV in my room at night. I used the kitchen sometimes, made coffee in the morning. It was fine. Almost a week went by like that. Then one night I came home, and his car was in the driveway. I wasn't expecting that. I went inside, and he was in the kitchen making dinner. He said his trip got canceled. Something about a client backing out. He seemed normal about it. Asked how I was settling in. I said it was good. I went to my room. After that, he was always there. I'd leave for work in the morning, and he'd be having coffee at the kitchen table. I'd come home, and he'd be watching TV in the living room. He'd hear me come in and come out to talk, ask me about my day, offer me food. I was polite. I'd talk for a few minutes and then say I had work to do, or I was tired. I started staying in my room more. He started knocking on my door at weird times. One morning, I was getting ready for work, and he knocked. Asked if the shower was working okay. I said yes. The next night, around 11, he knocked again. Wanted to know if I needed extra blankets. I told him I was fine. A few nights later, I was already asleep, and knocking woke me up. I looked at my phone. 1 in the morning. I got up and opened the door. He was standing there in sweatpants and a t-shirt. He said he thought my car lights were on. I looked out the window. They weren't. I told him that. He said maybe he was wrong, apologized for waking me. I started locking both doors after that, the one to the house and the one to outside. One afternoon, I came home early. His bedroom door was open. I'd never really looked in there before. I walked past, and I saw something on his bed. Laundry, folded clothes. I stopped because I recognized one of the shirts. It was mine. dark blue one I wore to work sometimes. I'd washed it a few days ago and left it in the dryer. I meant to get it later, but I forgot. I stood there looking at it. I didn't go in and get it. I went to my room and closed the door. I didn't know what to do. Maybe he was just being helpful. Maybe he folded it and was going to give it to me. But it was on his bed, not near my door or on the counter. On his bed with his clothes. That night, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room. It was late, after midnight. I was still awake on my phone. The footsteps stopped outside my door. I waited for the knock, but it didn't come. I could see the shadow under the door. Someone is standing there. I didn't move. I just watched the shadow. After maybe a minute, the floor creaked and the footsteps walked away. It happened again 2 nights later. Same thing. Footsteps, stopping outside my door, standing there. No knock, just waiting, then leaving. I wasn't sleeping much. I kept my phone next to me. I thought about saying something, but I didn't know what to say. He wasn't doing anything specific I could point to. The knocking, the shirt, the standing outside my door, none of it seemed like enough to make a thing about. But I started looking at how many days I had left. 17 more days, then 16. I stopped using the kitchen. I'd pick up food on the way home. I'd stay in my room until I left for work. I barely saw him, but I knew he was there. I'd hear him moving around the house. One morning, I was leaving for work, and I saw him through the kitchen window. He was just standing there, looking toward the back of the house, toward my room. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there. I got in my car and left. I made it 12 more days. I couldn't do the rest. I packed everything one afternoon while he was out. I didn't know where he'd gone, but his car wasn't there. I loaded my car. I left the keys on the kitchen counter and texted him that I had a family emergency and had to leave early. I didn't wait for him to get back. He texted me an hour later, said he hoped everything was okay, said if I ever needed a place to stay again, I should let him know. He'd give me a discount. He said he still had my number saved. He texts me sometimes, every few months, just checking in. Or, hope you're doing well. I never respond. I thought about blocking him, but something stops me. I don't know why. Maybe I want to know if he's still thinking about me. I guess that's stupid. I found a new apartment 2 weeks after I left. It's more expensive, but it's mine. No roommates, no hosts. I don't think about it most of the time, but sometimes I wonder about that shirt. Why it was on his bed, what he was doing outside my door all those nights. I don't know. I'm glad I left when I did.